What's up, Cerebral NFL fans? Happy Thursday, December 30th, 2021. Morning to everybody. This is Steve Hyder, and I greatly appreciate you guys tuning in for your daily allotment of Cerebral NFL news. What's up, everybody? So today's topic, you can kind of tell from the title of the video, what we're going to be talking about here is the NFL playoff picture and whether or not it's a good thing for the Philadelphia Eagles to be in this. I always look at things from a more complex nature of how things work out, guys. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm analyzing it, right? The way I look at things, there's always an opportunity cost to everything, right? You miss the playoffs. The opportunity cost is you can't evaluate a young head coach, a young defensive coordinator, a young quarterback. You can't analyze these guys against better competition. You want to get that one more chance with this newly, formed identity around the running game to see those guys play, right? On the other hand, the opportunity cost would be is that we make the playoffs. we're forsaking draft position, right? I mean, we may not have the greatest team when you really analyze the roster from top to bottom in terms of what it's going to be in the long-term future. And by making the playoffs, you could potentially put yourself in a position to where you might miss out or have to package things to go get certain players that you want. We're going to discuss all of that this morning, guys. I know it's early and this is a heavy topic for 9 o'clock in the morning. What can I tell you, man? I stay up all night thinking of these stupid, crazy scenarios in my head. So the first thing I want to talk about, guys, is we have to really look and analyze the roster as it kind of sits. So what I did is I focused in on the defense because I think the defense is the more important side of the football in this conversation that I'm thinking of in my head, which is, okay, we know we need to add some pieces offensively, but we also know that we can probably make the argument that there are some pieces already assembled for the offense. Defensively, probably a slightly different story, right? I broke the roster down into different categories to kind of analyze. So this is what I did. I broke it down into 3 age groups. So the first age group is guys as of today that are under 24. Put another way, next year they'll be 25 years or younger, but currently they're 24 years or younger. The second category is 25 to 29. Put another way, these guys would be 26 years old to basically 29 years old at the start of next season. And then the third range of guys is the 30 plus, right? Your veteran football players. Where does the Eagles roster stand out? Where does it stand up to? What does it look like? This is how I broke the roster down, guys. 20 to 24-year-olds, we have 11 players on the active roster, okay? 25 to 29-year-olds, we have 9 players. 30-plus-year-olds, we have 6 players. I want to clarify one point here that I think it's very important, which is the fact that I didn't analyze any of the practice squad guys. I didn't analyze any of those. They could potentially have a role in this team going forward, but I didn't count on that. I only took the guys that are actually on the roster. So if you guys are looking for certain players we have on the practice squad, you'd have to add that into your own figures. I left them out just given the nature of the conversation. So how do we line up with the veteran guys? Fletcher Cox is 31. Anthony Harris is 30. Ryan Kerrigan is 33. Rodney McLeod is 31. Darius Slay is 30. And Brandon Graham is 33. Those are 6 guys. There's 6 of our better players. That I would say that those are 6 of the better players on this roster right now, especially if we're just looking defensively. And what I'll say about those particular players is this. When you're probably in the stage of their career that they're in, I'm sure that those guys in particular, they want to make the playoffs. They want to play in the playoffs. You get what I'm saying? Like those guys, they know that they may not have too many more chances at this thing. Now, you can argue like, come on, man. Like some guys can play to 35, 36. They might have a couple more chances. But when you get to that age, you get what I'm saying, guys. When you get to the age group, you want to capitalize upon every single opportunity that you're afforded late in your career. And I think they're going to view this season as this is an opportunity. We definitely want to push for the playoffs. You heard Brandon Graham. When Brandon Graham went down with the injury, I believe he was on Jacob Media. He was on one of those type of media outlets. And he said, and this is back when we were getting stumped by teams. He said, we're going to make the playoffs. Make no mistake about it. This team's going to make the playoffs. And at the time, everybody was like, yo, that's crazy. What is this dude talking about? I think there's a different perspective for those guys, right? Then I want to talk about what I would call the guys that are kind of in the prime of their career, right? These are the 25 to 29-year-olds as they stand on our roster currently. TJ Edwards is 25. Marcus Epps is 25. Javon Hargrave is 28 currently. Andre Maddox is 25. Steven Nelson is 28. Hassan Ridgeway is 27. Alex Singleton is 28. Andre Chachere is 25. And Jannard Avery is 26. Those are the guys that fall between that 25-year-old to 29-year-old category on the team. These are guys that are probably kind of playing their way around in either getting that second contract or coming up on the second contract or even looking into their third contract. They're trying to get the big splash. They know that the deeper a playoff run gets, the better the stats they accumulate are, the more likelihood they're going to get there. We have an interesting mix of guys, right? I mean, TJ Edwards had to fight his way into this league as an undrafted rookie free agent. This is a guy who's fighting for his football life. He's doing a heck of a job of it. Marcus Epps was a later round pick that he got cut by the Vikings in 2019, and the Eagles liked him enough to bring him in. And he's had his ups and downs, but underneath Denard Wilson and Jonathan Gannon, boy, he looks good as a football player. I think Denard Wilson and Jonathan Gannon, in terms of the secondary, doing a really good job of developing guys, I should say. I think there's some schematic things that we all disagree with them on, but in terms of development, I do see development from the players. I look at this and I look at guys like Javon Hargrave. He's in the prime of his career. He's one of the highest paid players on the team. We're going to get into that aspect of things in a second. Andre Maddox just got that second contract to kind of illustrate that point, right? Steven Nelson didn't quite get that second contract he was looking for. Ends up signing here in Philadelphia. He's kind of on a prove-it deal. He's in that category of guys. Hassan Ridgeway was a guy that we traded for on a draft day a few years ago. He's a very productive guy, but he's definitely a rotational player in the NFL. I don't think that he's going to have that type of ceiling where you see him as a number 2 on a team. I think he's a really good number 3, an exceptional 4 defensive tackle. Alex Singleton, comes in from, I think he was playing in the Canadian Football League, the CFL. Comes in, has had a cup of coffee in the NFL before, and he starts producing on the Eagles. He's a really good kind of 4th linebacker. We're using him kind of as a 2nd, 3rd this season, and that goes into talent-wise, but, he is there. Andre Chachere, guy that's been around the league a little bit, has some familiarity with the scheme. We brought him in. He's 25 years old. He's very much just kind of stick around as a special teams player that can give you some nickel and safety versatility. And you got Jannard Avery, right? Guy that got picked as a 5th-round pick, I think, and then we traded a 4th-round pick for the guy. We believe that he could be that kind of Sam impact guy. I mean, he's had definitely an up and down season. I don't know what they're going to do with Jannard Avery. He is playing on an expiring contract, so he will be a free agent at the end of. Those guys have a different view and outlook on the team, right? And then you had the 3rd group, which is the young guys, the real young guys, right? These are the kind of the building blocks, if you will, around the football team defensively. Who are the building blocks? Zach McPherson, 23 years old. Josh Sweat, 24 years old. Kevon Wallace, 24 years old. Milton Williams, 23 years old. Davion Taylor, 23 years old. Sean Bradley, 24 years old. Marlon Tuipulotu, 22 years old. Josiah Scott, 22 years old. Patrick Johnson, 23 years old. Tyrone Jackson, 23 years old. Tay Gowan, 23 years old. So those are your 11 players that are under basically 24 years or younger at this current moment on the defense. So as you look at this list, what you could say is like, okay, we extended Josh Sweat, right? So 24 years old, he's going to be 25 next year. This is kind of his moment, like where he's got to start being one of those key figures on the football team, to be quite honest. We go past that. You got Milton Williams, a young guy that we're trying to work into a rotation. He's kind of this guy is supposed to be a mismatch element for us, right? We're supposed to be able to get favorable matchups and utilize his athleticism to win. Probably not the greatest guy at 2-gapping and holding up and trying to take on, double teams when they're trying to double the interior defense line. He kind of gets pushed out of his gap, but he's got really good pass rush versatility between being a 5-tech, 3-tech. Probably could put him as a 0 shade to where it's just like, hey, beat the center off the football, Milton, and get penetration through there. So, you got Milton. You got Davion Taylor. If we could just keep him healthy and on the field, I think is going to be a really good football player. Boy, did he impress when he got his opportunities this year, Davion Taylor. He might be the future at will. I don't know. He's very athletic, like a Darius Leonard, but he's not quite the same quality of player as a Darius Leonard, obviously, yet. Sean Bradley, special teams contributor. Marlon Tuipulotu is a guy they envision as probably playing the nose, being the main nose tackle kind of guy. He's a 2-gapper. He didn't look like he was strong enough for the NFL, if I'm being quite honest, guys, early on here. I think that's why he's kind of been on the roster, but kind of buried. He's only had I think under 30 snaps total on the season. This is a guy that needs to develop because, the buzz was he had an injury, and that pushed him to the 6th round. But this was supposed to be a 3rd round or so graded talent. I haven't seen it on the field yet. He suckered me too because I thought that was such a good pick when the Eagles made it. He has not lived up to it, guys. I hate to say it, but it's just truthful. He hasn't lived up to it, man. Next guy on this list is Josiah Scott. Sorry, guys. Josiah Scott's 22 years old. He's really I call him a shallow zone player. This is a guy that likes to play on the outside. He's probably more destined to be a nickel, although he likes playing on the outside. Same kind of features and feeling that you get from like an Avonte Maddox, right? Very elusive, very shifty, can go grab the football and take it away. I will say, though, hasn't had a ton of playing time. Don't know really where he's at. I don't think the Eagles are just going to look at Josiah Scott and say, oh, we got everything solved. You know what I mean? They're going to keep pushing, guys. You got Patrick Johnson, 23 years old. Patrick Johnson's they got him playing more of that Sam role. He can give you some versatility as an edge rusher. He's a young guy as well. We'll have to see what happens there. And then you got Tyrone Jackson, who's proven to be one heck of a pick. This was a guy I was high on. I loved his college film at Coastal Carolina. I got an opportunity to see him play quite a bit last year. And the young man was very good. And he's proven to be very good in the NFL. That spin move that he has is deadly as a secondary pass rush move. He's been better than advertised, I think. And then you got Tay Gowan. Tay Gowan is an asset we traded for. Tay Gowan's a really good player. I like Tay Gowan, but here's the problem with Tay Gowan. He doesn't have a ton of experience, guys. I mean, Tay Gowan has 1 year of like real level of competition in NCAA football, where he played at UCF for that 1 year. Then he opted out in 2020. Other than that, like, he's transferring in. He's opted out. He's only played 1 year of adequate competition. I just don't know where his development is, guys. I have no clue where Tay Gowan's development is, and I can't judge it until I see it on the field. And I just haven't had an opportunity yet to really see Tay Gowan on the field play. I did miss one player. I can remember we made another trade. I'm sorry, guys. We've made so many of these kind of deals in these trades. It's hard to keep up with some of these guys. Give me 1 second, and I will pull out who I'm missing. There is one player defensively that should qualify in this category that somehow I have let out, and he needs to be added to the young player category. Kerry Vincent Jr. So Kerry Vincent Jr., defensive back, kind of has some safety, nickel, can play a little outside too. He's definitely one of these more versatile players. So Kerry Vincent Jr. should be added to that list of guys, of the young guys. I want to say Kerry Vincent Jr. is about 23. Let me take a look, guys, just to confirm what I'm saying here. I believe he's about 23 years old. Now, he's 22 years old, okay? So Kerry Vincent Jr. is 22 currently, according to the Eagles site. Versatile player, right? But we don't know a lot about the secondary. We don't know a lot about these guys. So I don't know. Let's take a look at the chat, guys, and let's talk. Let's talk. I got some more notes here for you guys, but see what everybody's saying. What's up, Chris Perez? How you doing, buddy? What's up, Big Moose? How are you, buddy? Jason Williamson, how you doing, buddy? I'm doing well, man. I hope you are too. What's up, Jalen? I'm glad that you made for last night and this morning, man. I appreciate you, buddy. What's up, Sharif? Sharif says, does a prolific run game translate well in the playoffs? We must win the top. It does in cold weather. It definitely does when the ground gets cold and you don't want to tackle guys anymore. That's where a guy like Jalen Hurts and a guy like, Howard can be a problem for you. Boston Scott, even. There's guys that like to thump. Like, you don't like tackling when the ground gets cold. It hurts. So even professionals, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's it. Jalen said, I think you know my answer. And then we got Ben coming in and says, I think it's good to give Hurts some playoff experience. I agree, Ben. Like, there's a cost analysis on both sides of this, right? Remember when people thought our pick, the Dolphins pick, and the Colts pick were all going to be in the top 10, laugh out loud. Yeah, Chris. I was hoping, man. That would have been, that would have been a great. Well, it would have been a crappy season to watch for us, but it would have been a great pick status. You know what I mean? I keep hearing our cap for 2022 is $14 million for 2022. I thought for sure we'd have more. Is that correct, Kate? Yeah, you got to remember we extended, guys. And even $14 million is a bit high because you got to remember we have to counter in and we have to factor in the rookie salary pool. So when I looked at Spotrac's cap tables, it didn't look like they had factor in the rookie cap pool. So even their figure, you got to take, and it's a little high. They got 10 million on the rookie cap pool. Still have the rule of 51, so you have to remove the league minimum salary and times that by the amount of players that you're drafting because you've already paid that money. You know what I mean? It's already factored in, so you remove that. I'm going to say, honestly, it's probably closer to 6 or 7 million, to be quite honest right now. But the thing is, Big Moose, is they'll find money. We were 90 million over the cap. You know what I'm saying? Last season, 90 million over. And we ended up having 20 million in cap space by the time it was all said and done. You know what I mean? So they'll definitely find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way of doing anything. Chris said, yes, a run game can do well. It really depends on the matchup. Exactly. Yikes, said Chris. Certainly Sharif said certainly O-line is getting long in the tooth. Yeah, with Kelsey and a few guys, right? Chris said, I always thought TJ Edwards should have been drafted. TJ Edwards is a really good football player, man. He really is. Yeah, Andre Maddox. I got tripped up when I was saying it, Chris, between Shashere and him. Sometimes they trip me up with their first name. What's up, Dante Hill? How you doing, buddy? Chris said, yeah, but we got young linemen that can step up and become starters. Do we, though? I mean, Javon Hargrave is definitely going to be a guy defensively, right? I definitely think Milton Williams can be a versatile piece. I don't know that that's a guy you're lining up every day as a 3-tech. Maybe you can line him up every day as a 5-tech that can play that Brandon Graham role and bounce inside. I definitely think you can maybe kind of see what he's got there. I think you got something respectable when you look at a guy like, here's the thing. Hassan Ridgeway is kind of a mixed guy. I don't see him as a number 2. I see him as a number 3. And then, you got a guy you're trying to develop on the defensive line, Marlon Tuipulotu, that hasn't proven anything yet. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, Chris. Like, it's hard to say. What's up, Sharif? Yeah, Dickerson. I'm talking more so defensively in terms of the draft idea of like making the playoffs and will it actually hurt us? Because offensively, I think we have a little bit more younger pieces. Although, yeah, of course, we're worried a little bit about Kelsey. But I think offensively, there are at least some pieces. You can add a guy or two in free agency offensively and probably be in a really good position, I think. What's up, JT says NFL equals WWE. YouTube, Pat, I don't know. And his videos will show you evidence of rigged NFL. Also, YouTube, I don't know about all that, JT, man. I'm not really into the conspiracy theory stuff, bro. What's up, BLSG? How you doing, buddy? Chris said Gowan is going to be good. I just don't know where he is yet. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't seen enough of him. He doesn't have a ton of college film to really study, and he's got 1 year at UCF. I thought he played well in that 1 year at UCF, but UCF isn't exactly playing the SEC and even the ACC. You know what I mean? Like, and then he opted out in 2020, so it's kind of hard to judge where he is, Chris, quite honest. Who did Steve just say wasn't playing good? I missed it. I don't know, man. We'd have to go back and see. I don't know which one you're referring to. Sometimes it takes a few years in the right scheme to unlock a guy's potential. Just look at Rasul Douglas. Well, Rasul's had a lot of time in the league to develop, though, too, Natiro. And to be fair, I always pointed out that I thought Rasul was a fighter, at least. Like he's always out there calling guys on. He was doing that in that Atlanta game a couple of years ago where he was calling out guys. So, I mean, I always thought he was a fighter. I just thought that sometimes you can catch him in the foot speed department if he's not careful. What are defensive line looking like for this game? I think we're going to get those. I think we're going to get a lot of those guys back, Chaos, but it's a concern. But I think we're going to get guys back, to be honest with you. It's a good thing that some of these dudes tested on Monday if you're going to test positive, because it gives you the whole week to get back for the game. Zach McPherson has made a couple of nice pass breakups when he has been put in. Yeah, but he hasn't, to me, there's not enough extended playing experience there to really judge it yet. I still think Zach McPherson, in terms of the zone coverage stuff, he's got to get a little bit better with his eye discipline at times. But we'll see. We have to see where he's at because he just hasn't played a ton. It's hard to judge guys on that small amount of film. Mike Smith said early. What's up, bro? Our top priorities are pass rusher, safety, linebacker, cornerback, wide receiver in that order, 100%. Appreciate you, Keva. Dante Hill says, I have mixed feelings on the D-line and linebackers moving forward. Love Milton, TJ, and Alex in his limited role, but there's a lot of question marks in the young guys. I agree. It's a good way of looking at it, man. Jason said, I think the playoffs are a good thing for us. Free agents and more likely to sign here. That's a fair point, Jason, that the more successful you are as an organization, the easier the selling point is to get guys here. I agree. That's a good point. Because we had a lot of bad publicity coming into this season. So getting that positive traction makes people say, okay, like, I think people might have been really wrong about the Eagles in the office. I forgot O-line. We need one more elite lineman up front. We're going to get into some of the prospects, guys. He was talking about the O-line, Steve. Okay, got you. Sharif was. Got you. I got it, guys. I caught up eventually. Did you mention Marlon Tuipulotu? He's on the active roster last I looked. Has he improved? I haven't heard his name in games. I guess you just answered me. It was great timing, NFC East piece. It was great timing, man. Great timing. Big Moose said, what's your top 5 needs, whether it be draft or free agency gate? Defensive line, linebacker, secondary, safety, and cornerback. And we still need, in my opinion, an excellent wide receiver or a guy that can in general win, can separate. And then I also think that we could probably use, anytime you can add an offensive lineman that's talented, you add him, in my opinion. I'm curious to know what your take on us keeping Miles. I know he has injury issues, but I'd hate to see us let him walk. Shaking my head. Kiva, I actually made a video on this. It depends on the value. What's the value of the contract that the agent's going to see? To me, that's the bigger issue, right? Tell me the value of the contract, and I'll tell you if I'm interested. You know what I mean? If it's top 10 money, I'm probably out because of the injury history. If it's between 12 and 20, somewhere in that area, I think it's a little bit more of a like, okay, let's kind of see, like, let's see the figures and the numbers behind that. Kerrigan and Jackson are back from protocol. That's good. That's a depth right there, Jason. That's really good news for the Eagles. All right, so I caught up on the chat here. Let me talk about money. We talk about money, guys. So we talked about the roster. We got 12 guys that are 20 to 24. I said 11. There's 12. We got 9 guys that are 25 to 29, and we got 6 that are over 30. How does the cap numbers work out? I want to talk about 4 guys and their cap figures. So the 4 guys I want to talk about in terms of their cap figures. Darius Slay is going to cost us $22 million right now in base salary in 2022. Javon Hargrave is going to cost us $17.8 million in cap space in 2022. Fletch is going to cost us $14.9 million, basically $15 million if you round it, guys, in cap space in 2022. And then Brandon Graham's $9.4 million, basically just round to say 9.5, guys, in cap space for 2022. I will caution this, just because this is what the numbers say, you can do things to manipulate cap numbers, guys. They can always take guys that have enough base salary, and that's where it gets tricky because Fletch doesn't have a ton of base, so there's only so much converting you can do with a guy like Fletch, because Fletch only has 1.12 million in base. You're just nowhere to, it's all in prorated, meaning you've already paid him and you're just paying the league back, basically. So Fletch, it's tricky. That's why there's so much dead money if you cut Fletch. But then you look at a guy like Brandon Graham, same kind of issue. You got 1.1 million and you got 8.1 million that's in prorated. So it means Brandon's already received the money and we're back paying the NFL for converting base salary into bonus money. So you've already pretty much done what you can do with these 2 guys' contracts. But then you got a guy like Darius Slay who's got $16 million in base salary. He's got $5.5 million in a prorated bonus. So you could, it's kicking the can down the road, guys. I just want to be clear about what I'm saying here. It absolutely is kicking the can down the road. But you could definitely take 16 million, convert it into some base money. That base money, 16, into some prorated money, basically a signing bonus of some sort. And then you can work your cap that way. Javon has 12.75 million in base, 4.8 in prorated. You can obviously take some of that base and convert it into bonus money. So those 2 guys in particular, you know, Darius and Javon, you can do some things with their contracts to manipulate more cap space. It's not affecting the player. The player is still going to get paid. If anything, because you're converting it into a signing bonus, you're guaranteeing part of the salary essentially to them, because you're going to pay them up front. Then you're promising the league you'll pay it at a later date. That's what the prorated is. You can split it up over so many years. It's kicking the can down the road. I don't want to keep kicking the can down the road, but there's some things you just can't get around because of the way these contracts are. Darius Slay is a tough one because he's 31. I don't know if it's best just to pay the 22 million and go with a lesser veteran at the X receiver position. You get what I'm saying, guys? That's your options. You either extend money that you're going to have to pay back the NFL eventually for a guy that's 31, or you got to take lesser talent in free agency in some of these position groups to kind of get out of the, out of stopping that momentum of kicking the can down the road, if you will. Javon Hargrave, probably a little bit easier to make a case to kick some of the can down the road on his contract. He's 28. He's clearly going to be here for the next couple of years. He's a productive player. I can understand the organization's perspective in doing that one. I think Darius Slay's a little bit more of a challenge, although my wild guess is you're going to see him do it. My wild guess is you're definitely going to see Darius Slay get restructured. That's probably exactly what's going to end up happening, in my opinion. So you look at the money, you look at the age of the roster. You look at the fact that if we just handle business, we're going to be in the playoffs. We just got to handle business. Nothing's guaranteed. Like I said, guys, I ain't guaranteeing anything. Nothing's guaranteed in football. We all know that. But it's before us. It's all right before us. Question is, what do you get? What do you get if you kick it down the road? And that's the thing is like, okay, if we take the opportunity to put ourselves in the playoffs and see Nick Sirianni and see Shane Steichen and see Jonathan Gannon and his young coaching staff match up again against adequate competition, see what we've learned, what we've progressed, win or loss, did you play better? You know what I mean? We get the opportunity to see that. We get the opportunity to get playoff experience for a young quarterback. All that's true. It's all something you can gain. The cost being draft position, right? Because as I understand the picks, and I could be wrong, check it out, guys. I haven't checked this out in about a week. But as I understand it, we currently have, I think, the 19th, the 20th, and the 23rd pick. We're in that area, basically, guys. So now the question or the conversation, which I'm pretty sure you guys are going to enjoy this part of it, is what do we do? Who are the prospects? What does everything say? And here's the thing, guys. I want to make this point very clear. I'm not endorsing these players I'm naming to you here in a second. I'm just telling you, okay, here's what a publication is saying in terms of the value of the player. And here's a few names to kind of consider. I haven't evaluated every one of these guys yet, so I'm not going to endorse them yet until I evaluate them. I want to start off. So I'm looking at guys that are going to fall between 12 and back because that's the area where guys could slide or we could potentially trade up and target a guy, right? I want to name one big player who's not on the list because the publication currently has him dropping down the draft board, but he's still top 10. I'm using Draft Tech's 2022 big board. If you guys want to follow along, it's DraftTech.com. It's their 2022 NFL big board. Draft big board, I should say. The player I'm referencing, guys, is Ahmad Garner, the Sauce. Sauce is ranked 10th. He's rated 10th right now. So there's not a guarantee that he's going to make it all the way to 19. He's not in the evaluation. He's a guy I would definitely be interested in trading up a few spots for. If he keeps continuing to slide down, I don't know. Every other publication I'd heard prior to this had him more in the 15 to 20 range. They got him top 10. I don't know, guys. All right, here we go. First one, inside linebacker, Utah, Devin Lloyd. Definitely could fill a void here. I mean, it's difficult because I don't see any guy that's particularly a Sam. I think almost a Sam linebacker, you almost have to find a defensive end or a rush linebacker who's like what you would project for a 34 almost that can play a Sam. That's how you find an Anthony Barr. Those dudes aren't easy to find. You know what I mean? All right, Devin Lloyd would be number one. Number two, NFC East Beast is going to enjoy this one because he's already named him. Tyler Lindenbaum, center, Iowa. Anytime you can get a good offensive lineman, anytime you can build the offense or defensive line for the future, I know the Eagles, man. They're going to think about it, especially if that guy is falling down the board to you. I don't think Linderbaum gets 19 either, to be quite honest. I still think that'd be a guy you almost have to target and go get. I don't know if I'd target him, but, man, if he's there at 19 and some of the bigger names I was targeting defensively are gone, that's an easy one for me. All right, Jordan Davis, interior defensive lineman, Georgia. Once again, you look at building in the lines, building in the trenches. I know the Eagles believe in it. Jordan Davis should be right around the value currently. Things are going to change, guys. Guys are going to climb the board. Guys are going to fall down the board. Where they are right now is certainly not where they're going to be come like early April. We all know that. But the early indication is that Jordan Davis, who was an interior defensive lineman from Georgia, would be right in that 19 to 24 pick range. So you're kind of there with him, right? Nakobe Dean, UGA, inside linebacker. A lot of you guys are huge on Nakobe Dean. He's rated to go just a little bit before 19, but definitely if you're targeting a player, you think that player would be an impact player for you. He's not quite top 12 in this draft class by most scouts so far. We'll see how things change as they keep evaluating, but he's a guy that potentially could slip just depending on the value of how people value linebackers. Might make it to you in 19-20 range, or he's within reach to trade up for. All right, we finally get into a cornerback. Andrew Booth, Jr., Clemson, defensive back. I haven't had a lot of time to go over the film yet on these guys. I'm not endorsing these defensive backs yet, guys. I need to see 4 or 5 games before I endorse anybody. I'm not ready to the point to endorse any of these guys. I'm just naming the guys I see that are listed in terms of the prospects. All right, guys. Cameron Thomas, San Diego State. He's an edge rusher. And finally get to an edge rusher that's in this range of guys. I don't know his game yet, guys. I haven't watched any of Cameron Thomas's films. So I don't really know what he is as a prospect yet, to be quite honest. Roger Mccreery, Auburn, cornerback. Getting to the defensive backs. And guys, I've got guys that are listed between the first and very early third round. That's where I have these guys listed that I'm pulling for you. Equinu, NC State, tackle guard. He's going to be a guard in the NFL. He mostly plays the left side. I don't know if he can play the right side, but this is a tremendously talented offensive lineman. Equinu and Linderbaum interest me a lot as prospects. I like both of those guys a lot. I know this organization loves offensive linemen. I would not rule out something like that. I was kind of surprised to see this guy because they had him at 12. And at 12, I think he's in play. David Ojabo, edge rusher, Michigan. If he's going to be around the 12 mark and the Eagles really think he's an impact player, I wouldn't rule out the Eagles trying to make a move forward to get a guy like that. I don't know how they have him rated, guys. I haven't watched enough of his film personally to say where I think he is. I've seen a couple of his games, but I haven't studied it, from a film perspective. Just watching games as a fan, basically. So until I can actually see it from more of a scouting perspective, I'm not going to say that I'm endorsing any of these guys. Daxton Hill, safety, Michigan. I put in a few safeties for us. I got them valued between late first all the way into like early third. So between our first, second, third round picks, how we may or may not manipulate the board, we'll see. Kingsley Anagbar, I don't know how you say his name. South Carolina, he's an edge rusher. So got another edge kind of in play. He looks like more of a late first round, early second round kind of guy. So see if the Eagles start targeting guys, moving down the board, moving up the board. I don't know what they're going to do. Martin Emerson, Mississippi State cornerback. The last time we took a cornerback from Mississippi State, it worked out pretty well. Not that we drafted him, but, Darius Slay. Pretty good football player. All right, y'all. Jordan Battle, safety, Alabama. You guys know who Jordan Battle is. He's a good football player. Khair Elam, cornerback, University of Florida. Jaquan Brisker, safety, Penn State. Chad Muma, I don't know how you say his name, guys. Inside linebacker, Wyoming. Nolan Smith, we finally get an outside linebacker here. Nolan Smith, outside linebacker, UGA. Trayvon Walker, defensive end / he's kind of like a 5-tech guy, defensive lineman, UGA. Jalen Petrie, safety, Baylor. Isaiah Folsky, defensive end, Notre Dame. Haskell Garrett, interior defensive lineman, Ohio State. Brandon Smith, outside linebacker, Penn State. Logan Hall, edge rusher, Houston. Zion Johnson, offensive guard, Boston College. Perion Winfrey, 5-tech, defensive line type, Oklahoma. And then one more guy I wanted to add here, just to bring him up. Christian Harris, Alabama, inside linebacker. I think it's like 25, 26, 27 guys or so I just named here. Between that value of being 12 all the way back to the third round. Early third round, I'd say. We need to add talent to the defense. That's kind of what I was honing in on. I know that even in speaking defense, you always got to watch offensive linemen. So I added in a couple of offensive linemen, a few offensive linemen, actually. I think I put in 3 offensive linemen, from Linderbaum to Equinu and at NC State to the kid from Boston College. Can't remember his name. Zion Johnson. So you look at this and okay, how do you build the roster, right? That's kind of the thing, is how are you going to build the roster? Who are the targets? Who are the guys you're going to go after? I still think, like I said, guys, interior defensive line, edge rusher, linebackers, safeties, corners, all levels of the defense can use bodies. On the offensive side, you can always use an offensive lineman. And then you also have, split end, boundary side receivers, or guys that just, in general, can gain separation. I think all those guys are in play. All those styles of players are in play, those position needs. I didn't mention any of the X receivers, guys. I'm going to do that in a completely separate video because that's a much bigger discussion. It's going to take a lot longer to get into that one. All right, I'm going to get into some comments, guys, real quick, because it's been a little while. So let's do some comments real fast. So Chris said Miles also has issues with his vision. Yes, he has a tendency to hit the wrong hole at sometimes. It's Paul's, but you get what I mean. Big Moose said, so the whole defense essentially, laugh out loud. Yeah, pretty good argument to be said there, right? Kivo said, Sirianni's offense will be one of the most explosive offenses in the league. We have multiple guys running wide open on numerous plays every game. Hurts just has to see them quicker. And Kivo said, if Hurts doesn't pan out once we get that elite talent at quarterback, we'll be tough to stop, I promise you. Chris said Kivo 100%. Dante said Kivo 100%. You got a couple of seconds there, seconding your motion. Chris said Frank Reich is going to have a good coaching tree. I believe you're right, Chris, because I also like the guy that they had as the quarterback coach that they elevated to offensive coordinator. I think he's a good one too. Do I remember correctly that Brandon Brooks was renegotiated this year? Yeah, he did have some kind of renegotiation to his contract, NFC East Beast, and he's one of the highest paid players on the team. He's the guy that I think he's in real risk in not being here next year, to be quite honest. Kivo Sanders has one more year on his rookie contract. Exactly. He's got one more. Linderbaum. I knew NFC East Beast was going to be in favor of Linderbaum. What's up, Fireman 2531? NFC East Beast says, I think I can get a good linebacker in free agency. It's a matter of the cost. Like, I think Anthony Barr is going to be a free agent. There's a few guys that will be in free agency. I don't know if they're actually going to make it to the market. And, team's got time to sign them, but their current team does. But, matter of who's there. That would be a great pick. Dante said, I'm using all three. We need talent. Lloyd is a bad boy side-to-side line. The salary cap is not really an issue since none of the young guys are going to command a massive contract for years to come. But you got to remember, if you pick three guys in the first round, it's going to be about $10 million to pick those guys. Now, I will say this. It's not quite 10 because you have the rule of 51. So you got to factor in the league minimum contracts and then subtract that out. So I'd say it can be about 7 to 8 million is what's going to cost you for your draft picks in the first round if you take all three. There's a bunch of good defensive linemen this draft. Wait till the second or third. Once you get outside of the top 15, the prospects are hit or miss. I agree, Chris. Second round picks outperform players picked in the second half of the first round. There's not 16 through, I'd say, about 50 in particular. 16 through about 50 in particular, I think can be very small details that are separating them. We will see. Our linebacker core is getting better, so why don't we take care of the secondary? It's about value and what's there. You know what I mean, Jeffries? It's what's available. Jordan will be there in the second round, in my opinion, but Jordan, David, and Lloyd, maybe John Mechie. They might go with another receiver. That's the value in the areas. There's a ton of receiver prospects right now. That's where the valued area is. I don't like taking linebackers in the first round unless they're Micah Parsons. I hear you, Chris. I think Devin Lloyd is that type of prospect. I don't know if he's Micah Parsons. That's a heck of a thing to say, but he's an impact guy. I think you can get a linebacker in the second round, honestly, and that be, Darius Leonard was a second round pick. Chris Aluve, always mess his name up. It is smart to trade Dillard or keep him as a backup. He can only play one position, but he has played decent this year. I mean, it depends on the value what teams are going to give you in the tier. I mean, if they're going to give you a lot for him, I'd probably trade him. Just because, we got other guys that can play swing tackle role. We picked Sidney Jones over Cooper Kupp. It happens. Marcus Brady. Do you think we package 2 first rounders and move up into the top 10 to get a defensive end or safety. I have to see what the trade value is to get up and where. You know what I mean? You got to look at the trade value chart and just get a general consensus or an idea. It's not, obviously teams can differ from what that trade value chart says, but that's normally a pretty good starting point of what it would cost to go somewhere. So I'd have to see, like, okay, is it going to be 2 picks and future compensation? On top of that, I'd have to see what the value would be. But I do think there's a chance that we do maneuver, whether it's only a couple spots, whether it's drastically upwards. You know how Howie is. He likes to move the board. Pick the top 3 best players available. Chris said, or we can trade out of the first. I don't know if we're going to trade all 3 picks out of the first, but I do think that there is a distinct possibility that if somebody is chasing one of these quarterbacks, we might be a trading partner. Especially when you're looking at the 19th and 20th pick. If they fall that way where we're 19 and 20 in the pick order, there's a possibility one of those picks get traded. That Miami pick could rise. They play Titans and then Patriots last 2 weeks and could miss the playoffs. Possibly, Big Moose. I hope it does. You're a Miami fan. I apologize. I don't wish you any ill will except for this season because we own your first-round pick. So, yeah, sure, I would like that to happen, Big Moose. That would be an ideal result for the Eagles. Do you have faith that Howie will make right picks for the first round? Yes and no, Jason. It's not really just Howie. The draft board set up by several people. Where we have the dilemma here is when you have disagreements between scouting, analytics, and coaches, can Howie use prudence in his judgment to make the right call between those departments? I think that's really where the problem is. Howie's not on his own making these selections. It's Howie's lack of judgment at who's right on things between scouting, the analytics department, and the coaching staff. That's really a concern is when you have those disagreements. Do you think Sayamalo will be on the team next year? I don't know, NFC East Beast. I think it depends on what we see happen in this draft. I do think Isaac Sayamalu was visioned to eventually replace Kelsey at center. I think that's what they visioned. It's a matter of, do they want him in that role or do they use him as trade bait because somebody's going to want Isaac Sayamalu because he's a starting caliber guard and he can potentially be a really good center if a team wants to go that direction with him. So, it probably depends upon what teams start to wave in front of us in terms of trade value. I do think you're on to something, NFC East Beast, that we can't just assume he's the future center. It's very possible. So could Andre Dillard. You know what I mean? Both those guys could potentially be trade bait. Especially if you're looking at the draft, trying to entice people to gain position and get people. It's very much possible. What did the Panthers offer for Dillard? I don't know, Chris. I'd have to look that up. I'm really not sure off the top of my head what the offer was from. Kivo said, I think Ojabo from Michigan will be the best player in this draft. Ooh, that's a big statement, Kivo. I don't know, man. I haven't really looked into him that deep to make a bold prediction like that, to be quite honest. Use two of the first round picks and trade away one for next year for 2023's draft class. I think the problem with that, though, Jeffrey, and obviously we're prognosticating. None of us know what's going to happen. But I think the issue with next year's draft is I think most organizations view the 2023 draft in its totality to be a much stronger draft class for things like quarterback and stuff like that. I do think this draft class is particularly strong at the defensive line. So it's really kind of a matter of what do you want to do and how do teams value those picks, because they might not be so willing to give you a 2023 first for a 2022 first. We'd have to see. What's up, Dalton? He said, have you ever checked out Carlton Marshall at linebacker? I have not, but to be fair, Dalton, I am still very much in the infancy stages of evaluating prospects. We're still in the in-season mode, so it's really hard for me to kind of change gears and get into the evaluation mode and the scouting mode, but that's coming. That's normally what I do in heavy detail following, pretty much the season. Dante Hill, so frustrating. Miami goes on a winning spree. Then next year, win 3 games, shaking my head. That would probably stink. definitely. When they won like the 7th straight, I was just like, man, like that would be some Philadelphia Eagles stuff, right? Like, of course, we would have a team's first round pick, and then they lose like 7 in a row, I think, and then they start winning 7 in a row. It's like, man, only in Philly will we have this type of bad luck. All right, Kibo said, I like Bradley Smith at Penn State. I think he'll be a steal if he slides to the 4th round. Do you think he's going to slide that far, Kibo? I don't know how to evaluate some of these guys in terms of where they are yet, because I haven't done enough film study yet to evaluate where I think the potential class is going to be. Right now, they got him rated as a back end of the third round guy. So I don't know. I don't know if he slides that far or not. It's really hard to say. The little bit I saw from just watching Penn State's games, he looks like a good football player. I have to actually watch him from a scouting perspective though, and see the film and judge concept, scheme, how he's reacting, what he's doing in the scheme, what he's being asked to do in the scheme, things like that. I will say it probably helped some of these Penn State linebackers that Micah Parsons didn't play in 2020, because it gave them extended film to put out there. Because Micah Parsons would have just dominated the film in 2020 for Penn State, so you would have had a major issue if you know what I mean. If that's the only guy because he's just going to flash. Guy, what's up, Bird Gang? How you doing, buddy? How you guys doing? So I just want to take a quick second while your comments roll in to just kind of point out some partnerships we have on the channel. Number one, I'm going to thank my guys here. If you want to buy this hoodie, their links are in the description below. This is a young, upcoming company in Ultra Game. They are officially licensed to sell NFL merchandise. They have very competitive prices. It's part of the reason why I go and I use them is because of the price guide on it. But you know what I mean? Guys, if you want to see all that stuff, links down in the description below. All right, Dante said, speaking of film study, how much time did it take you to evaluate last year's draft class? A lot, Dante. Last year, I expanded upon how many players I was evaluating. I looked at 4 games from each player I evaluated. Sometimes I could find condensed film to study on them. Other times I had to go through the full film and keep, you got to keep pulling it, finding the defensive plays, finding the offensive plays, that kind of stuff. So I would say that in total, I spent probably 45 to 60 hours a week just in film. And that was probably over a duration of about 12 to 14 weeks in total. So, I mean, it takes some time, man. It definitely takes some time. And just think, I'm not doing it at the professional level. They're spending well over 60 hours a week on film study. NFC says, I think that next year that Lane may be the only 2017 starter left on the O-line. Interesting perspective. You think Kelsey's going to be done, NFC East? I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not going to predict it. I have no clue, NFC East, but I don't know. I hope Kelsey's back next year. I still think Kelsey's a heck of a football player. Kivo said linebacker Chris Muma out of Wyoming, edge rusher Tyreek Smith, Ohio State. Edge rushers are some late round guys to look for as well. Chris says, what do you think of Jahad Dotson? I haven't really got into film study yet, Chris, not in extended periods yet. So I don't have really well-formed thoughts on a lot of these guys quite yet. I can tell you what I think in terms of like seeing them play a game or two, but I haven't broken them down from a scouting perspective. At least you don't have to work in the summer, right? Yeah, exactly. Now, the summer's where I spend a lot of time on the cap and things like that and explaining concepts, and I review the concepts and the scheme, basically, and I do a lot of scheme elements is over the summer. I spend a lot of time breaking down scheme in the summer. I have a very expensive subscription to Pro Football Solutions. It's very expensive, guys. But it allows you to do some stuff with scheme, to be quite honest. Dante said, really appreciate it. We really do. Thank you, Dante. I appreciate you guys tuning in, guys. I mean, it's just me talking to myself if you guys aren't here. Daxton Hill, LSU at safety is a decent second-round pick if Hamilton is gone. Yeah, Kiva, I got a feeling Hamilton's going to be gone before the top 10. Like he's probably not getting out of the top 10. I would love to see that happen just because that would entice me to go get a guy like that. But yeah, Mad Hatter said, "Can Rager turn things around?" Ooh, give me a sip of coffee for a second before I get in this one, Mad Hatter. Yes. Can he turn it around? Sure. Will he turn it around? I don't know. The thing with Rager is this. I was high on Rager in the 2020 draft class. I didn't think he was above Justin Jefferson. You remember, Mad Hatter, I made 2 videos about Justin Jefferson because, to be honest, a lot of the fan base was not sold on Justin Jefferson. A lot of people kind of act like they were, but truth be told, there was only a few of you guys I remember that were like really in on Justin Jefferson, that was your guy. A lot of people, they were a little, But I will say some people, to be fair, while they may not have been in on Justin Jefferson, I do recall a lot of guys were in with me where they liked T. Higgins a lot. I do remember that too. There was a lot of guys that maybe weren't in on Justin Jefferson. You had your doubts about Jalen Rager, but you were definitely in on T. Higgins. The thing is I don't know what the coaching is for the young man. I don't know what's going on here. I think he's pretty good when you allow him to get off the line of scrimmage. So when he's facing zone, he's pretty good at gaining separation against zone. The problem is that when I see him play man, his release off the line of scrimmage is just absolutely horrible. I can forgive the drops. Like, drops happen. It's disappointing he dropped 2 footballs that were, they're difficult catches. I'm not saying these were easy catches. The second one, pretty much as easy as you're going to get in the NFL. But, I get that anxiety things, those things are real. I get it. But to me, what bothers me more than the drop passes, because he's only dropped 3 on the season and 2 were in 1 game. What bothers me about the drop passes is simply put, or what bothers me about him is in the totality. I'm sorry, guys. What bothers about the total package with him is he's not beating man coverage. And he has not shown a lot of ability in now his second year to beat man coverage. So at some point, you've got to put it on film. We've got to see it on film. He is the lowest graded receiver versus man coverage that we have. He is literally the lowest graded guy. I think the only guy he's ahead of is Jordan Howard. And that's a running back who's not a receiving back. That's a problem. Like, Jalen Rager should be better than that. Jalen Rager doesn't lack talent. I'm starting to wonder what the focus is and what the work ethic is. Now, I'm not in the room, so I can't challenge him like that. And I know that people have gone on the record and they've vouched for his work ethic. I've definitely heard Jason Avant, who was a coach last season. He was an assistant wide receiver coach on the football team. He said that Jalen Rager has a dog in him. He's actually very competitive and he does work hard. Is he working on the right things? Is he working on the right things is my question. And if you're working hard, then maybe you're not working on the right things, man, because I don't know what's happening here, but he's not separating against man coverage. And he's got to start separating against man coverage. This is not an excuse. Do I think the talent is there? I think the underlying talent is there, Matt Hatter. If he ended up having a 100-yard game in the next 2 games to close out the season, would it shock me? No. Would I ever put my money on that? Heck no. I'm at the point with Jalen Rager. I just want to see 3 catches and 50 yards in the next 2 games, each game. If you give me that to where we have at least 3 or 4 games throughout the course of this season that you put up at least 50 yards receiving, okay, maybe we look at a role play kind of, where you got to fight your way back onto the roster. Right now, I think he's got to earn back a crap ton of trust. Not just with the fan base. I mean, the fan base is the fan base, but inside the locker room. Yeah, he's it's complex, man. It's complex, Mad Hatter. I mean, guys always have the opportunity to get better. It's not off coverage is not his problem. As a matter of fact, he's been missed on reads where he's wide open versus off coverage, if I'm being honest. He's definitely been missed on some plays versus off coverage where he's wide open. With that said, he gets removed from far too many plays versus press. When they put him in press situations, he gets removed from the read really quickly. And that's a problem, you know what I mean? Because now we're basically playing a guy down. He's got to be better at it. You're not going to win every rep in the NFL, don't get me wrong, but you got to win more than what he's winning. I remember when Kelsey was ready to retire, but he seems like he wants to keep playing now. Yeah, he kind of flirted around with that for a few years. What's up, Show Enough? How you doing, buddy? You're a history teacher, right? I was talking about that job. Yeah, Chris, I used to teach social studies. What's up, Jeremiah Butler? How you doing, buddy? What's your thoughts on Jalen Hurts, and do you believe he will be a better quarterback next year? And how do you think we will fare if we make it to the playoffs? Jeffrey, that's an excellent question. I don't know how we're going to fare when we make it, if we do or don't make it to the playoffs. I'm going to lean towards we have a very good potential to make the playoffs. In terms of Jalen Hurts, I mean, look, I think that his game is progressing. I think that he's receiving a lot of coaching. I see sometimes now where he's more willing to hang in the pocket and not try to play off schedule as much. He's still got, to me, it's more in he's getting better at playing on time with the offense, right? So not playing outside the structure of the play call. But now we're getting into how do you get in rhythm? Getting him to play in rhythm with the play call. So syncing your footwork up, right? Throwing from a solid base, from a solid platform when you throw the football, those type of things. Now that's where we're at with him, along with, he's a young guy. He's not a rookie anymore. I'm not calling him a rookie, but he's still very young in terms of how many games he's played in the league. He's got to start progressing in terms of understanding coverage, which I thought what he said in the press conference, guys, was pretty impressive. Like, it shows me that he's not lacking. Like, he sees the stuff on film. This is a matter of repetition. And can he eventually form the instinct through experience to know immediately from pre and post snap looks what he's looking at? That's where we're at, Jeffrey. I can't say if a guy will or won't make it. I mean, guys got to put in work, and some guys make it, some guys don't. I think he's got as good a shot as anybody else. Show enough said, I agree with Kivo. There will be some good edge rushers in the late first, early second. Better drink that cup and make another before a Rager eval. Exactly, man. It's frustrating dealing with him. Chris said, Justin Jefferson was my number one receiver in that draft class. He wasn't my number one, I'll admit, Chris, but he was definitely, I had him top 3. Chris said, I liked Rager too, though. I liked Rager a lot too, but I knew Rager wasn't in the top 4 conversation. Like that was a mistake, but I was definitely in on Rager as well. I mean, Rager's college film was good, but I knew the limitations. I knew he played in the Big 12. I knew he didn't face a ton of man coverage. I knew that he didn't, he missed a lot of time because of injury. He had a lot of inconsistency in quarterback play. So, I mean, there were going to be some developmental issues with him, but I thought his talent was just going to rise above. That has not been truthful. His talent has not rised above. Jefferson wasn't my top guy until he was the best available for us. I hear you, man. Jason Williams says, hey, Gate, I got your next cup of Joe. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you, buddy. Jeremiah said, I hated the Rager pick. Some people did. I'm not going to say everybody liked it. I don't think everybody was in on necessarily having Jalen Rager be the pick. I think it was definitely more division there, but I don't think a lot of people were in on the Justin Jefferson pick. As I remember and I recall where the temperature was in the room that year, people had doubts about Justin Jefferson too. Now, there was a very small group of people I remember that were adamantly for Justin Jefferson. We're like, this dude is a star. They have not watched SEC football. They think this guy's not going to be a credible prospect in the NFL. I don't think anyone saw Justin Jefferson becoming what he became. I mean, I was big on him. I made 2 videos about him. I didn't think Justin Jefferson was going to be this good. I'll admit that straightforward. I'm going safety first. I expect only 1 to 2 players maybe out the first round. If we're sold on Hamilton, it might take 2 first to get him. You might have a point there, Shona. Brian said, hey, Steven, what's up? I wanted Claypool or Ayuk. Chase Claypool. Yeah, you did, Brian. I remember it was you and there was somebody else that was really high on Claypool. I cannot remember for the life of me who it was, but somebody used to hit me up almost every day when I did the draft evaluations with Chase Claypool. They were very high on him. Jalen said, one suggested change to how to view our roster. Instead of age being the main factor, look at the contract situation as in what side of the rookie deal are you on? Long-term deal begin or ending? Kind of the argument about Steven Nelson and some of these guys that, like, did they ever get the second contract? Did they ever get – I get what you're saying. Do you see Quez stepping up even more? I do, Jeffrey. I do, because I don't think Quez has reached that point in his development yet to where he's fully nuanced in terms of setting up routes and setting up defenders. I think he's only going to get better, to be quite honest. Maybe another year under this coaching staff will help. I don't know, Chris. I hope so, because I mean we have like 90. We talk about 99 defensive backs. I like to make that joke. We got 99 defensive backs. We also have like 99 receiver coaches. Like, I mean, come on, man. Steichen's coach wide receivers. Sirianni's coach wide receivers. Patullo's coach wide receivers. Aaron Moorhead. I mean, like, come on, man. Like, Jalen said, then add age into the equation versus where the players stacks up against the rest of the NFL. We can do just a special stream where that's all we talk about, Jalen. We can definitely do that. What about Hightower practice squad? I haven't practice squad, so I didn't really count him in. But if you want to look at him as a long-term piece, the fact that the organization still held on to him, I'm kind of shocked they haven't played him, Chris, to be honest. I mean, I know he's been elevated to the active roster, I think, once or twice, but I don't recall him getting any snaps. Maybe he did. I'll have to look at his snap count. But I expected down the stretch that kind of the way we did with Quez last year, Quez Watkins, I thought we'd see that kind of same thing with him, especially when guys weren't really doing anything. You might have a point here, Chris, that maybe John should get another chance because John can separate. Hightower can gain separation from defenders. That has never been his issue. His issue was he had some concentration things where he heard the footsteps last year, a couple passes. With the progression we see in Quez and Goddard, it's not a coaching problem with Rager. Also remember, Avante, Barrett Brooks are a homer. Seth is the only player you can really trust when talking about players' work ethic. Avant. I got you. You mean Avant. Avant and Barrett Brooks are homers. I think Jason Avant does give some. I get what you're saying, Jalen, that maybe he's not that far removed from the player, so he's not going to come out and really, really critique them hardly. He's not going to, not hardly, harshly. But I do think Avant does give some really good insight to things. I do think that he knows what he's saying. But I get what you're saying, that he might not be that far removed from them, and there might be some kind of loyalty here because he's got relationships with these guys. Gates, how much is it a lack of talent at the wide receiver position, or is it our lack of the wide receiver coaching position? It's an excellent question, Eagles Uncensored. We got a lot of wide receivers, like I've just made that point. We have a lot of wide receiver coaches that have developed other guys. I think anytime you have this type of situation, it's a little of both, right? Maybe the players didn't take to the style of coaching you had. Maybe you didn't assess where their deficiencies were as well as you should have. So maybe it'll get better with time. Maybe you'll be a better now that you have far more experience with the players. Once you get them in the off-season program stuff, like they're going to be able to be far more detailed with where they need work, and you're going to progress them. That could be potentially possible. I don't know. I think it's a little bit of both, man. I definitely think that we could use a veteran guy that can separate. Put him in there with Quez, put him in there with Devontae Smith. Use Jalen Rager as a fourth guy or whatever. Then find you a fifth guy, a special teams contributor. You'd probably be okay. Cameron said, who would you prefer for a new defensive coordinator, Mike Zimmer or Patriots linebacker coach Jarrett Mayo? Jarrett Mayo. I'll say this, man. Probably I go in a different direction than both those guys, Cameron. Mayo's a fine prospect. He's a young guy, fine head coaching into defensive coordinator. But he's already a DC, isn't he? I thought wasn't Mayo named a DC, I thought? Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, you're right. He is the linebacker coach. I remember now. He's the linebacker coach, Cameron. I'm going to go a different direction. If the Giants blow up everything, and look, I think Jonathan Gannon is going to be our defensive coordinator next year, to be quite honest. I don't think he's going to get a head coaching gig. I think he's well respected around the league, and I think guys are going to give him looks. He'll get interviews. I don't think he's going anywhere this year. I don't. I think he's going to be your defensive coordinator next year. But what I will say is if an unlikely situation happened and Jonathan Gannon got hired as a head coach, you can never predict it. Brandon Staley got hired after one season. But if that happens, I'm going to give you a name that I think should be mentioned here. Let the Giants blow everything up and go take Patrick Graham. I want Patrick Graham. Patrick Graham knows how to. He knows how to actually. Number one, he stays into the. It's not too big of a differentiated system because he does play too deep. He plays a lot of quarters. He plays a lot of cover 2, and his main wrinkle is he likes to play cover 5, which is cover 2 man under. I think our guys will fit that. I think that he's a really smart guy that knows how to coach guys, and he's getting a lot out of that Giants defense. Even though it's not rated and ranked highly, when you look at the film, you look at the way he's played us these 2 games, I want Patrick Graham. Splits defensive play calling. Mayo does. Sorry, man. I pulled it up and pulled it down. Said Mayo splits defensive play calling with Bill Belichick. I feel like people don't realize how important releases are for beating mankind. Yeah, Chris, exactly. Yeah, because it removes you from the progression. If you lose off the line of scrimmage, quarterback's removing you from his progression. Just the way it works. He might come back around to you if he has to go off schedule and, he's eluding the pocket and we're in a scramble drill. But, yeah, it's really important. Kiva said, what's your synopsis of the Sirianni offense? I see guys running wide open every game. Do you believe it has the potential to be the second coming of that Kansas City offense or even better? I see it. Not Kansas City because it's different. It's different from Reed's style of offense. He's young. He's young, Kiva. I want to temper expectations here. Even though I was a huge Nick Sirianni guy, I said outright before he was hired it's who I would hire. He's still got a ways to go in terms of growth. He's still learning matchups. He's still learning. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to get expectations to be too crazy. Like Sirianni's still growing as a play caller. He's still growing as a head coach as well. Jeremiah said, at Eagles Uncensored Podcast, I believe it's at least 70, 80% lack of talent. We've seen undrafted guys like Fulgham and Ward have better stretches than our high draft guys. It's a fair point, Jeremiah. Inconsistencies in quarterback play is an understatement. Yeah, I mean, anytime you got a young quarterback, though, that's why I keep trying to tell people, like, that's my fear about drafting a guy. You're going to relive this again. You're going to relive this again because I don't think any of these guys are going to come in and be that nuanced that's available for this draft class. So you're still banking on ceiling. If only James J 30T said, if only Lamb had fell to the Eagles, or if we had traded up and got ahead of Dallas. Chris said, I remember people hating Justin Jefferson because they thought he could not play the slot. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that. Aaron Moorhead kind of convinced the front office to move on from him because he kind of convinced them that Rager's a far more versatile player, can do things in punt return, kick return, and you can use them inside, outside, where he thought Justin Jefferson doesn't give you that versatility and the playmaking ability from a punt return, kick return situation. And he was pretty much solely an inside receiver, which was wrong. I'm not coming at a lot of people thought that, but he was the main guy that kind of pushed that narrative from what I understand internally. Do not trade back. We need Ahmad Garner. Isaiah Smith, I would love to have him here. I would love to have him here. He's a really good player. A lot of you guys chiming in saying that, best player available. Marky Mack said, why trade 2 first-round picks when the safety from Penn State or Michigan's Dax Hill should be available late first round? Well, I think it depends upon Marky Mack is how you evaluate other guys. Like, are you looking at an impact player? Because if you got a guy that you think is an impact player and will completely change the face of your defense, that's why you would make that change instead of just getting adequate or good players. So it's a matter of, do you identify a guy as an impact player? Show enough said the sauce. Jeremiah said, I thought Jefferson would be what Claypool is, a great possession guy. Boy, was I wrong. I don't know, Cameron. Depending on how this draft goes, by the time we pick, it might be worth trading back. If Jalen Hurts learns to drastically improve his timing and more consistently leading the receivers, he will be a Pro Bowler, not alternate. Yeah, throwing the ball with anticipation, throwing guys open instead of waiting for them to get open. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Do you think the Eagles should dip back into the Alabama talent pool? Kind of, Jason. Kind of, kind of do because it works for teams. Alabama produces really good football players. If I'm looking at this and I got these picks and I can maybe get a guy like I don't know, if I can get a guy like Christian Harris at inside linebacker in the back end of the second, maybe early third. He's an inside linebacker. I mean, you still got T.J. Edwards. You got guys that you can maybe flex out and try to figure out the Sam linebacker position. I mean, I probably would because we need talent upgrades, and those guys are really well coached there. They just are. The young man that's an outside linebacker for them, Jason. I can't remember his name, but he's got like 15 sacks on the year. He's coming out next year's draft class. That dude's going to be special, man. I can't even think of his name, and the dude's going to be straight special. He's going to be such a good football player. Hightower was getting open. He just had a problem tracking the ball and catching. He was definitely beating man coverage. Quez worked his butt off in the offseason. Yes, he did. Clearly. Maybe it is time to let Moorhead go. These receivers seem to develop more under Groh. Groh was an exceptional wide receiver coach, though. I don't know if that's the fairest comparison just because of how good Mike Groh was as a wide receiver coach. I'm halfway on that one, James, to be honest. On one hand, I like consistency in the coaching staff. I don't want to keep, we've been through so many wide receiver coaches, like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Jalen said, I knew Jefferson was going to be good, but I thought he would be a bit better than Juju level, but below Keenan Allen level. I was a fan of going after boom or bust players. I hear you, Jalen. Man, boy, did he turn out to be a lot better than a lot of people thought, to be quite honest. Chris, dang, you guys are already ready to fire Gannon? So there are members of the fan base, Chris, that are definitely ready. But I also think it has to do with the reports that he's interviewing for head coaching gigs. I think a lot of people see the reports that he's interviewing for head coaching gigs. A lot of front offices love Jonathan Gannon, so I think people feel like that maybe there is an outside chance he gets hired as a head coach. Marky Mack said, I thought the receivers have developed, especially compared to the past few years. I agree, Marky. I agree with that one, Marky, a lot. I think the receiver group is just missing a big-bodied, a split end X-line receiver, somebody that can separate or doesn't need separation to take the ball away, who can be that guy. If you can get a guy that's incredibly good at separating, I'm all for it. If you can get a guy that just has the wingspan and is just physical and has strong hands and can move the chains and can be a red zone threat and can give you that kind of productivity, I'm all for it. Zay the guy said, how is this even a question? Of course, going to the playoffs is good. What do you see in Taylor? Can he become an outstanding linebacker? The athletic profile, Jeffrey. It's the athletic profile of Davion Taylor. He's got to build his instincts up because he just hasn't played a lot of football. But the athletic traits for Davion Taylor are really, really high. He's an incredibly active football player on the field. And you already saw just 1 year of difference in his, getting accustomed to in the NFL, what it did for him, how productive he became. He looked lost the last year. This year, he looked like someone that looks like a future piece to the defense to me. Dester Lettuce Choke said, morning, fellas. I don't know if anyone knew Jefferson would be this good. Also, I trust Avant's assessments over Brooks or Seth's. Bring that he's closer to the being he's closer to the locker room. Jeremiah, I'll say this about Seth Joyner. Seth Joyner, I really love it when he talks about defense and he talks about technique and where he sees some issues in terms of the technique, especially from the linebackers and the edge rushers. What I will say is that Seth has a tendency to get emotional, and sometimes maybe that emotion clouds the judgment or the assessment. But I love when he talks about technique because he's really talented in that perspective of things. Chris, that I was talking about Rager's quarterback at TCU. Jeremiah said, plus Seth and Brooks have an older view of the game, not a wrong view, just older, outdated. Maybe we're seeing the two back sets come back. Ernest said Jefferson just got overshadowed by Chase because he's that dude. Kiva said there are deep shots there. I feel like if we weren't in the midst of watching Hurts go through his development stages, this offense would easily be a top 3 with how open wide receivers and running backs are on plays. Some of that has to do with what he's instructed to do, though, Kivo. The way that Sirianni is setting up the progressions in the read for Jalen, it's meant to remove reads for him. So it's definitely a little bit of a half-field read concept you're playing with him. Cameron said, wait, I meant don't trade up. Big Bird said Linderbaum with one of our first picks would be a great pick. Yeah, you and NC East Beast would be, seems like you guys would be real happy if that pick comes in. I mean, there's a possibility, Big Birds. I mean, anytime you see the Eagles and offensive linemen, it's always got to be in your back of your head that they'll take a guy if they feel like the position value is right. I mean, look, this past year, what they did with, Dickerson. I certainly didn't. I knew there was a possibility they would take an offensive lineman. I didn't think it'd be Dickerson. So, I mean, Jaquan Brisker is a beast. I got to watch more of his film. I haven't really seen enough of his film. But I see a lot of people are pretty high on him. Jeremiah said, laugh out loud at Ernest. Come to find out, Jefferson is that dude. They're both pretty good. Chase and Jefferson turned out to be, that was a lot of talent at LSU. Then you add into the mix that, Burrow turns out to be a pretty good, quarterback. Ernest said, Burrow and Chase just connect better. Kivo says Sirianni just needs to mature on his run-pass ratio at times. I see that he seems to go to extremes when it comes to being pass-heavy or run-heavy. Balance will be key in 2022. So, Kivo, it sounds like you're kind of in the same boat as Allie. When I spoke with Allie, Allie was kind of like, she always feels like Sirianni kind of has one foot out the door when it comes to the running game a little bit. I think it's an assessment I'll have to make in the offseason. I don't want to say anything too definitive on that. I want to see the scheme with fresh eyes over each game and then chart things. And then I can kind of come up with that assessment, what I see from charting things. Because I want to see tendencies. Chris said, the problem was LSU's offense was crap during Jefferson's sophomore year when he played outside as a receiver. Yeah, I meant to say trade back. I don't think we should trade up because we need to fill all these holes on defense. I agree. I agree. Brisker will have a lot of success in the NFL. Yeah, he seems to be a popular player, man. You guys are not the only people I've seen who've asked me to make sure I break him down when I do the film studies. Thoughts on Devin Lloyd, linebacker from Utah? Good looking prospect. I like Devin Lloyd a lot. I haven't really got into I haven't got into all the fine details yet of his game. That's going to be, guys, I'm going to break down all these top prospects. This year's draft class, I'm going to do, you guys expect me to do wide receivers and quarterbacks. I'm going to give you wide receivers and quarterbacks, but this one, the new wrinkle this year, guys, when I do the film study for these draft prospects, expect to see a lot of defensive linemen and a lot of linebackers. I'm going to expand that on the analysis for everybody this year. James said Alabama and LSU are NFL player factories. I guess it helps to have Cousins throwing the ball. Will Anderson. Kiva says, I don't like Christian Harris on tape. I'd only take him in the 4th at best. It depends on how you rate his athletic profile. I think he's a very instinctual player, Christian Harris. So I don't know if he's going to be rated as a 4th yet, Kiva. I'm not that deep into the analysis to say. I feel he's more of a 3rd, but we'll see. I mean, you know what I mean? I think he's more of an early 3rd right now. Chris said Cousins needs to throw down the field more. Eastside Monster said, "What's up, everyone? Everyone ready for some Eagles Washington ball in a few days? Hoping for a victory, man." Gannon can go, so we get Zimmer. Yeah, someone like Justin Jefferson. Here comes my guy Philly Mike with the flowers. What's up, Mike? How you doing, buddy? Mike had to drop the flowers, man. Appreciate you, buddy. If we could get JJ to run routes and sink his hips and cut, he would already have been that X. I agree, NFC East Beast. I really was expecting more from JJ. I really hate it. It hasn't turned out yet. That's the one that bothers me because I do think that somewhere it's in there with him. The route running is, he had to progress. His rookie season, he was horrendous as a route runner. But man, I was hoping Nick could do something here. I thought Nick might be able to do something with him. He still got some years left on the contract before we got to really get worried. But he is kind of approaching that 5th-year option thing, so we got to figure some stuff out with him. He's got like one more year until we got that 5th-year option on the horizon. Jefferson's route running reminded me of Allen Iverson. Plus, he was great at contested catches. That's why I was so high on him. What I remember about Justin, and I made a video about this, is that I thought he was exceptionally well at the head fake and setting defenders up with his eyes. If he got a defender, if the defender looked at his hips, he'd just kill him. So I wasn't even concerned about guys that were watching his hips. But if a guy looked at his eyes and was trying to judge his eyes, he would do these little subtle head fake things to get you out of position and he'd go right around you and take the ball. He was so good at that. At Chris Perez, I was making the same thing. That pick will haunt us forever. Sorry, guys. I'm just clicking through. So I'm trying to get to everybody's comments if I can before I jump off. All right, Kingsley. I don't know how you say his last name, Isaiah Smith. I need to hear somebody say it. Is a top 10 talent falling on a lot of drafts? Yeah, I kind of mentioned him in the thing. I just couldn't say I didn't know how to say his last name, but South Carolina edge rushers have normally turned out to be fairly athletic guys. So, I mean, that's someone I'm definitely, I want to look into, and I'm going to see how he stacks up. So Brian says, Stephen, do you think that the timing component is teachable or comes with reps, or is it instinct, and how can instinct be improved, if at all? It's all those things you just said, to be quite honest, Brian, when you're talking about quarterback play. So getting better at anticipating the throw and things like that, it's best way I can describe it is when you're in the Navy, Army, Air Force, doesn't matter what branch of the service, right? When you're in the service, you run drills so that way things become second nature to you, right? You learn the concepts, you learn what's going on, but then they drill the crap out of you. So that way you're no longer thinking. It's part of a process, right? It's second nature. It's instinct. So he needs to be put into position to where those things are replicated on such a basis with the quarterback coach, with the offensive coordinator, with his private quarterback coach he works with independently, that it just progresses his game and he's not even thinking about it anymore. It's instinct. It just kind of takes over you. It's a little of both. Jeffrey says, Steve, I'm still upset not getting DK. Yeah, I think they removed him because of that neck injury, which I don't know what the doctor saw in so many of these organizations, but he's been perfectly fine. Yeah, that class was as advertised. Burrow was underrated, even by me. Yes, so I underrated him too. I was concerned about Burrow's hand size and his arm strength, and he turned out to be really good. Siri knows to run. Howie and Jeff just talk to him before the game and be like, "Hey, if we can run, but you got Jalen to pass a little more." Yeah, showing up. You've been mentioning him a few times. Said Tyler Shaw out of Texas Tech is another guy you should break down. He'll be a mid-round pick. Yeah, I'm going to break down quarterbacks. Philly Mike getting some love from everybody in the chat, buddy. Playoffs are always good. I always see things as a trade-off future. So I don't think things are inherently good or bad. It's a trade-off, right? You make the playoffs, The benefit being is you can see a rookie head coach, a rookie defensive coordinator, a very young offensive coordinator. You get to see those guys once again, one last time, play adequate competition to assess where your team is. You get your young quarterback experience in the playoffs, right? With the trade-off. So if you want to say it differently, it's easier to phrase this to get people's attention, to say good or bad, but it's really a trade-off is what I'm discussing here, teacher. The trade-off is you can forsake your draft position. And then if you're looking at the long-term prospects of the roster, especially defensively where you got 6 guys over 30, and you got a lot of younger guys you don't really know what you have in yet, losing that draft position, it can mean having to package to get forward, maybe considering moving back, maybe considering if a team really wants that quarterback prospect in 22, you can take picks from them in 23 where you think there might be a more diversified approach to the draft, better players overall through all the position groups, not just defensive line. There's a trade-off. It's just a trade-off perspective, really. Future said we don't know if our quarterback can beat winning teams, so yes, we need to see the playoffs. How do you feel about going after another running back in this draft? I mean, if the price is there, Kivo, I would do it. Personally, I would do it if the price is there. The right, you know what I mean. Like if they get a guy they think is Jonathan Taylor, I go get him. I take the chance personally. Eastside Monster, you got a hello and a good morning, bro. Man, that dude Kenneth Walker looks special. We should use JJ more. All right, Jeffrey says, hopefully, and I speak for myself, Howie don't mess up the draft this year. Was a decent draft last year. Not many misses because we've been through it for many years of his first round picks. 2018 was a pretty good draft class with limited resources to get the players. But I agree with what you're saying, the premise here, Jeffrey, which is we got potential to keep building upon successful draft classes. He's put us in the position. Now we just need to capitalize upon the position. Hurts has left more wide receivers wide open than I'm used to seeing. We have a much better wide receivers now. Kiva said, yeah, I'm hip about how Hurts reads are set up, but I believe that's more so to simplify it for Hurts than the actual potential of the offense once it's ran to its full capacity. It's both ways, Kivo. So here's what I'll say about that, right? You're right. It is meant to simplify things for Taylor. It's also meant to help him progress along with the pre-snap read. So when you're half-field reading, you're judging that half-field by the reads you have pre-snap. So it's meant to grow you in that perspective of things. But at the same time, we have to consider, outside of Devontae Smith, who played in the SEC and played a lot of press coverage, a lot of these guys haven't played press coverage. They're coming from conferences where it wasn't, there. A lot of these guys came out of spread concepts, so they're not used to running traditional offenses. So I do think it's a little bigger than just Jalen Hurts. The reason we ran RPOs was for Jalen Hurts. It was also for Kenneth Gainwell. It was also for Jalen Reagor and all these guys that came out of these spread concepts, even Quez. Those guys came out of those concepts. So it's about growing all these young guys together, in my opinion. Nick gets guys open. James said JJ has to go. Not sure why he could not develop at the NFL level. He just didn't lack the explosiveness to separate. That's probably the easiest decision. You do not pick up Jay Jaw's option. That pick took years off my life. Actually, you know what? Now I think about it, guys. JJ doesn't even have an option. Now I think about it. So he's on the final year of his deal because he was a second-round pick. He only gets a 4-year contract. He's not a first-round pick, so he doesn't even get the 5th-year option. So we don't even have to worry about that. Now I really think about it. I trust Howie to pick the right defensive players and get gems in the later rounds. He's proved he's got an eye for that. The scouting department does. Like I said, Howie doesn't deserve all the credit nor all the blame. There's guys that come together to create the draft board. What Howie does, simply put, is he's the guy that he sets everything into motion, right? He's the guy that sets everything into motion in terms of deciding when there's differences between the scouting department, the analytics department and the coaching staff. He's the decision maker. All right, guys, I'm about to jump off here. We've almost been on here for an hour and a half. I just wanted to look through and just see if there's anyone we haven't gotten to yet. I'm going to pull your comments up if I hadn't seen anybody. But now it looks like everyone's commented at least once. Guys, I thank you so much for rocking for an hour and a half with me. Appreciate y'all so much. Do me a favor, guys, if you haven't yet on your way out, if I can ask you a huge favor, if you like the content, just hit the like button, guys. Links are in the description if you want to learn how to get games basically for one subscription fee. There's a link down below that talks about VPNs. You should look into that, how you can get games in Europe for free by using a VPN. Also, my guys at Ultra Game, good, decent products at a very affordable price. I would check them out, guys. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much, and I'll see y'all in the next. Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Major announcement tomorrow. Peace out, guys.